Patricia Thomas had been walking for 3 hours through a sandstorm that reduced visibility to absolute zero, shut down every navigational system the Galactic Survey Corps possessed, and forced 17 highly trained alien professionals into paralyzed compliance with emergency protocols. She had her eyes closed. She was humming an old postal route song about desert winds and persistent delivery. The aliens were following her because every alternative had failed, and they were 16 hours from dying of exposure. "Dip in 20 steps," Patricia called over her shoulder, voice muffled by the howling sand. "Drops about 2 feet. Don't lock your knees." Commander Kael'thas, stumbling along 5 paces behind with his helmet sensors screaming contradictory terrain data, counted the steps. On 20, the ground dropped exactly as she'd said. He caught himself, adjusted, kept moving. Behind him, the rest of the expedition struggled through the zero-visibility nightmare, tethered together by emergency cables, trusting their lives to a human postal worker who navigated with her eyes closed. This violated every protocol Kael'thas had learned in 30 years of command. "Thomas," he transmitted over the failing comm system. "Your eyes are still closed." "Yeah." Patricia's response came through clearly despite the interference. "Easier to concentrate. Rock formation coming up on the left in about 40 steps. You'll feel the wind change when we pass it." Vex Thule, the security officer, transmitted from his position in the middle of the line. "Commander, this is insane. Standard protocol demands we shelter in place and wait for orbital extraction. Standard protocol assumes functional sensors and breathable atmosphere reserves." Kael'thas replied. "We have neither. Thomas, how confident are you about this route?" "Same as I've been for the last 3 hours," Patricia said. "We're making good time. Should reach the riverbed in another 15 minutes. We can rest there." Dr. Lirana's voice cut through the comm channel, sharp with scientific precision. "There is no riverbed on any survey map of this region." "Ancient riverbed," Patricia corrected. "Dried up maybe 1,000 years ago. But the depression's still there, deep enough to give us shelter from the wind. Trust me, I can feel it in the temperature gradient." Kael'thas watched his helmet display flicker and fail again. The storm had hit them 40 minutes into their rescue mission, transforming a straightforward march to a crashed survey ship into a nightmare of sand and wind and failing equipment. Within 5 minutes, every navigation system had gone offline. Within 10, visibility had dropped to less than a meter. Within 15, the expedition had ground to a halt. Emergency protocols activated, all personnel preparing to shelter in place and pray orbital extraction could reach them before their life support failed. Then Patricia Thomas, human postal worker assigned to the expedition as a civilian logistics observer, had volunteered to walk them out. "I've been in sandstorms before," she'd said, her voice calm in the rising panic. "Spent 15 years delivering mail in Nevada and Arizona. You learn to navigate when you can't see. I can get us to that crash site." Kael'thas had denied the request immediately. Letting a civilian lead a military expedition through lethal conditions was unthinkable. But then the senior navigator had confirmed that without sensors, they had no way to determine direction. The survival specialist had calculated they had maybe 18 hours of breathable air in the shelters. The alternative to trying something desperate was sitting still and dying. So Kael'thas had authorized it, had watched Patricia close her eyes, turn her face into the screaming wind, stand silent for 30 seconds, then point confidently in a direction that contradicted every reading his dying sensors provided. "That way," she'd said. 12 miles, give or take. Stay close and keep quiet. I need to count." She'd been counting ever since. Kyle Tuss could hear her sometimes between comm transmissions, a steady murmur of numbers mixed with that old postal song. She walked with absolute confidence, her posture relaxed despite the wind that staggered everyone else. Her eyes stayed closed. She called out obstacles before his sensors detected them, when his sensors detected anything at all. "Rock formation on the left," Patricia announced. "Feel that?" Kyle Thas did feel it. A sudden shift in the wind, a pocket of relative calm as they passed something massive and solid he couldn't see. The temperature dropped 0.5 degrees. Patricia adjusted her angle slightly, compensating for something his instruments couldn't measure. Michael Torres, the human geologist assigned to the survey team, transmitted from his position near the rear. "Patricia, how are you doing this? You've never been on this planet before." "Same way I did it in Nevada," Patricia replied. "Counting steps for distance, reading the wind for obstacles. Temperature tells you terrain. Sand density underfoot shows you what's below. It's all the same, Michael. Desert's a desert. But you can't see, don't need to see. Eyes give you too much information, most of it useless in a storm like this. Senses work better when you stop trying to look." Patricia paused mid-stride, tilted her head slightly. "Riverbed coming up. 30 more seconds." Kael'thas counted. At 28 seconds, the ground began to slope downward. At 32, they were descending into a depression he hadn't known existed, and the wind suddenly diminished to a manageable roar instead of a deafening shriek. "Down another 10 feet, Patricia instructed. "There's a ledge here that'll give us complete wind cover. Watch your footing." They descended carefully, alien and human alike, until they reached a shelf of packed sand and ancient rock that cut the wind to almost nothing. Patricia finally opened her eyes, blinked sand from her lashes, and looked around at the huddled expedition with mild satisfaction. "Told you," she said. 15-minute break. Drink of water, check your seals, stay tethered. Storm's not letting up, but we're making good time." Kyle Thas stared at her. His helmet sensors were still useless. His navigation systems remained offline. He had no idea where they were relative to their objective. No confirmation they were heading in the right direction. Nothing but Patricia's calm certainty and the fact that everything she'd predicted for the last 3 hours had been perfectly accurate. Dr. Lirana approached Patricia, her scientist posture rigid with skepticism. "You're navigating by dead reckoning. Step counting and basic environmental awareness." "Pretty much," Patricia agreed. She pulled a water tube from her suit and drank. "That's impossible in these conditions. The margin of error should be catastrophic by now." "Margin of error is about 30 feet, yeah." Patricia shrugged. "But I'm not trying to hit a specific coordinate. I'm following the terrain. Wind patterns show you the shape of the land. Temperature differentials map the geology. You count steps to measure distance, but you adjust based on what you feel. It's like..." She paused, searching for words. "It's like when you walk home from work every day for 15 years. You stop thinking about it. Your body just knows the way." "This isn't your route home," Lirana said flatly. "This is an unmapped alien planet in lethal conditions." "Yeah, but walking's walking." Patricia sealed her water tube and stood. "Ready to move. We've got about 3 hours to the crash site if we maintain pace." Kyle Thas activated his command channel. "Fleet Command, this is Ground Expedition 7. Status update." The response came through heavy with static. "Expedition 7, Command, report. We are mobile and proceeding toward objective. Human Thomas is navigating by dead reckoning. All electronic navigation remains offline." A long pause. Then, "Repeat that, 7. You're following a human postal worker through a Category 7 sandstorm with non-functional navigation. Affirmative, Command. She has successfully located shelter twice and navigated 3.2 miles with accurate obstacle detection. Request assessment. Continue current approach or revert to emergency shelter protocol? Another pause, longer this time. Kyle Thas could imagine the conversation happening in the command center above. The debate about whether this was desperate ingenuity or suicidal stupidity. Continue current approach, Command finally responded. And Kyle Thas? Get me Thomas's complete personnel file. I want to know how a civilian mail carrier does this. Acknowledged, Command. 7 out. Patricia was already moving toward the edge of the sheltered depression, closing her eyes again, turning her face into the wind that roared above their temporary refuge. Storm's shifting, she called. Winds coming more from the east now. That's good for us. Means we can angle slightly north and save maybe 20 minutes. How can you possibly know that helps us? Vexthul demanded. Patricia opened one eye and gave him a patient look. Because I've been building a map in my head since we started walking. Every step, every turn, every obstacle. I know exactly where we are relative to where we started. The crash site is northeast of our original position. Wind from the east means we can cut the angle tighter. She closed her eye again. Mail carriers learn to navigate by memory. Can't stop and check maps when you're carrying packages in the rain. Same principle. She started climbing back up toward the full force of the storm. The expedition followed, because the alternative was staying still and dying slowly. Kael'thas climbed after her, counting his own steps now, trying to understand how she did it. Patricia walked with a steady rhythm, never hesitating, never second-guessing. She called out obstacles with casual accuracy. Temperature drop, big rock ahead, go left. Wind shadow, we're passing a dune crest. Sand's looser here, high steps, don't drag your feet. Every prediction was correct. The storm intensified. What Kael'thas had thought was the worst of it proved to be only the beginning. Visibility dropped from nearly 0 to absolute 0. His helmet sensors didn't just fail, they shut down completely, overwhelmed by conditions outside their operational parameters. Emergency warnings flashed across his display. Environmental hazard critical. Navigation systems offline. Shelter recommended. Patricia didn't slow down. Thomas, Kael'thas transmitted. Storms reaching peak intensity. Standard doctrine. Standard doctrine gets you buried alive in a dune. Patricia interrupted. Trust me, Commander. I've seen storms like this in Arizona. The worst thing you can do is stop moving. Sand accumulates fast. You shelter in place, you wake up under 6 feet of compacted sand. Better to keep walking, stay ahead of the drifts. That contradicts every survival protocol we have. Your survival protocols were written by people who navigate with sensors. I navigate with memory and attention. Different rules. She was humming again, that old postal song, mixed with her quiet counting. Kael'thas realized she was marking rhythm as much as distance. Every step a beat, every 100 steps a verse. She'd turned navigation into music, something her body could do without conscious thought. Ancient riverbed in 40 steps, Patricia called out. Wait, no. Make that 45. Wind's pushing us slightly off angle. 45 steps later, they descended into another depression. This one was deeper, the wind cut to almost nothing, and Kael'thas could feel the change in the sand beneath his feet. Harder packed, older, the remnant of water that had flowed here millennia ago. Patricia opened her eyes again and smiled. See? Told you. All deserts are the same. Desert if you know how to read them. Dr. Lirana stood rigid, her helmet tilted in an expression Kael'thas recognized as pure scientific bafflement. "You found a geological feature that doesn't appear on our surveys. In zero visibility, with your eyes closed. It's not on your surveys because you map from orbit," Patricia said patiently. "Can't see ancient riverbeds from space if they're buried under surface sand. But down here, walking, you can feel them. Temperature, wind patterns, sand density. The land remembers water. You just have to pay attention." Michael Torres laughed suddenly, the sound strange and slightly hysterical through the comm system. "She's right. God help us. She's completely right. We've been trying to navigate like we're flying. She's navigating like she's walking. It's a completely different skill set." "It's a mail route," Patricia corrected. "Same 30-mile circuit. 5 days a week, 15 years. Rain, snow, dust storms, desert heat. You learn to walk without seeing. You learn to count without thinking. You memorize every crack in every sidewalk." She started moving again, eyes closing, face turning back into the storm. 3 more hours to the crash site. Let's move?" They climbed out of the ancient riverbed and back into the full fury of the sandstorm. Kael'thas followed a human postal worker who navigated by memory and instinct and 15 years of repetitive routine. And he wondered if maybe the galaxy had been dramatically underestimating what humans could do when they stopped trying to be impressive and just did their jobs. The storm reached what Dr. Lir'ana's suit computer labeled unsurvivable intensity, approximately 90 minutes after they left the second riverbed. Patricia kept walking. "Explain your process," Lir'ana demanded over the comm, her scientific curiosity apparently stronger than her survival instinct. "In detail. I need to understand what you're doing." Patricia's voice came through steady, unworried. "I'm counting steps. Started at 0 when we left the landing site. We're at about 42,000 now. That's roughly 12 miles, accounting for terrain variance. I'm reading wind direction through pressure on my suit. Temperature differentials through the thermal sensors everyone's suit has but nobody's paying attention to. Sand density underfoot tells me what's below. Packed sand means old surface. Loose sand means fresh drift. Hard pan means rock formation." "That's basic environmental awareness," Vexthul interjected. "It shouldn't provide navigational accuracy." "It doesn't, not by itself." Patricia adjusted her angle slightly, responding to something Kael'thas couldn't perceive. "But I'm also building a map. Every step, every turn, every obstacle creates a data point. After 15 years of walking the same routes, my brain does this automatically. I don't have to think about it anymore. My body just knows where I am based on how far I've walked and what I've passed." "You've never walked this route before," Lir'ana said. "Doesn't matter. The process is the same. I'm creating the route as I walk it. Every landmark gets memorized. Every turn gets recorded. I can walk us back out the exact same way because I've been paying attention to everything." Patricia paused. Wind shift. We're passing something big on the right. Maybe a rock outcrop. Adds a waypoint to the mental map. Kael'thas felt the wind change. His useless sensors registered nothing, but his body felt the difference. A sudden pocket of calmer air, gone in seconds as they passed whatever caused it. Patricia had called it before he'd noticed. "This is impossible," Lir'ana stated flatly. "Humans don't have enhanced spatial memory. Your neurological structure doesn't support this level of unconscious terrain mapping." "Sure we do. Every mail carrier develops it. Every delivery driver. Anyone who walks or drives the same route repeatedly." Patricia's voice carried a hint of amusement. "You just never studied it because it seems mundane." Nobody writes papers about postal workers remembering their routes. But we all do it. Have to. Can't stop and check maps when you're carrying packages in a rainstorm, so your brain learns to track automatically. Michael Torres transmitted from his position in the line. She's describing procedural memory, like learning to ride a bike or touch type. The conscious mind stops being involved. The body just does it. Exactly, Patricia agreed. Except instead of typing or biking, I'm walking and remembering. Same cognitive process, different application. After 15 years, I don't think about navigation. I just walk and my brain tracks everything automatically. Kyle Thas listened to this explanation while stumbling through absolute darkness. Trusting his life to cognitive processes the galaxy's xenopsychologists had apparently never bothered to examine. How accurate is your map? Right now? Maybe 95%? I've made about 8 minor course corrections based on wind patterns and terrain features. Put us maybe 100 feet off a perfect straight line, but that's not how you navigate anyway. You follow the terrain. Straight lines are for spacecraft. Patricia's counting continued underneath her words, never stopping. We'll hit the crash site in about 70 minutes. Maybe less if this wind keeps pushing from the east. The expedition continued in silence after that, each member alone with their thoughts as they followed a human who walked with closed eyes through conditions that had reduced the galaxy's most advanced navigation systems to expensive paperweights. Kyle Thas found himself analyzing the last 3 hours with increasing discomfort. His people had sensors that could detect heartbeats through solid rock. They had navigation computers that could plot courses across entire star systems. They had technology that made the impossible routine. And yet, they'd been completely helpless the moment that technology failed, while Patricia Thomas had simply closed her eyes and started walking. "Commander," Vexthul transmitted privately, "I need to ask the obvious question." "Go ahead." "If humans can do this, navigate by memory and instinct in conditions that blind our sensors, why aren't they already integrated into surface operations across the fleet?" Kael'thas had been wondering the same thing. "Because we never asked. We assumed our technology was superior to biological capabilities. We never considered that some skills can't be replaced by sensors." "We should have," Vexthul said quietly. "This is a command failure. Xenopsychology should have identified this capability years ago." "Xenopsychology studies exotic abilities," Kael'thas replied. "Enhanced strength, radiation resistance, extreme temperature tolerance. Nobody studies postal workers. Nobody asks mail carriers what they can do." Patricia's voice cut through their private channel. "Big change coming up. Temperatures dropping fast, winds hitting something solid. My guess is we're approaching the canyon system where the ship went down. Should see the first cliff face in about 2 minutes." Kael'thas checked his chronometer. 2 minutes and 14 seconds later, he walked face first into a rock wall he couldn't see. His helmet absorbed the impact. Behind him, the expedition stopped. "Found it," Patricia said cheerfully. "Okay, the crash site is at the bottom of this canyon system. We need to descend about 300 feet. There should be a natural path. Wind erosion creates them in sedimentary rock formations like this. Give me a minute to find it." She walked along the cliff face, one hand trailing against rock Kael'thas couldn't see, her eyes still closed, reading the stone through touch and wind patterns. After 30 seconds, she stopped. "Here. Path angles down at maybe 20 degrees. Watch your footing. It'll be narrow in places. Stay tethered and don't rush." They descended single file into absolute darkness. Kael'thas followed Patricia's steady pace, trusting her completely now because every alternative had failed, and she'd been correct about everything for 4 hours straight. The wind howled above them, but the canyon walls provided shelter, and the temperature rose slightly as they descended. "Crashed ship is at the bottom," Patricia called up. "I can feel the heat signature from buried engines, maybe 50 more feet." Dr. Liana transmitted urgently. "Thomas, our sensors can't detect any heat signature. The interference is too strong." "Your sensors can't," Patricia agreed. "But your suit's basic thermal layer can, if you pay attention. There's a warm spot ahead, about 5 degrees above ambient. That's engines that crashed 30 hours ago, still radiating through buried hull plating. Trust me." 50 feet later, Patricia stopped. "We're here. The ship's buried under about 6 feet of sand, but the hull is intact. Emergency hatch should be..." She moved 10 feet to the left, knelt, started brushing sand away with her gloved hands. "Right here." Kyle Thas knelt beside her and helped dig. Within minutes, his hands hit metal. They cleared the hatch and Patricia knocked in the standard emergency pattern. A moment later, the hatch unsealed from inside and a voice called up, "Who's there?" "Rescue expedition," Kyle Thas responded. "Ground Team 7. How many survivors?" "All 6 of us. We've been sheltering here since the crash. You made it through the storm?" "We had a guide." Kyle Thas looked at Patricia, who was already standing, brushing sand off her suit, her expression one of quiet satisfaction. "A very unusual guide. They extracted the survivors, 6 aliens, tired but unhurt, grateful and confused to see a rescue team in the middle of the worst sandstorm the planet had experienced in recorded history. They crowded into the narrow space at the base of the canyon, and Kyle Thas transmitted to Fleet Command. "Expedition 7 to Command. All survivors recovered. 0 casualties. Requesting orbital extraction." The response came back sharp with disbelief. "Confirmed, 7? You reached the crash site?" "Affirmative. Human Thomas navigated successfully. Requesting immediate extraction before storm conditions worsen." "Negative on immediate extraction, 7. Storms affecting orbital operations. We need minimum 6 hours for safe descent. Can you maintain position?" Kyle Thas looked around the sheltered canyon base, then at Patricia, who had sat down against the buried hull and closed her eyes. "Affirmative, Command. We're secure. Thomas, can you get us back out if we need to move?" Patricia opened one eye. "I can walk us back the way we came, yeah. I remember every step, but honestly, we're good here. Canyon provides shelter, ship hull blocks wind. We've got enough life support for 12 hours easy. Just rest and wait for pickup." Dr. Liana sat down heavily beside Patricia. "I need to understand what you did. For the scientific record, you navigated 12 miles through 0 visibility with perfect accuracy using nothing but step counting and environmental awareness." "Not perfect," Patricia corrected. "We're probably about 100 feet from where I thought we'd be, but close enough to find the ship, which was the point. 100-foot margin of error over 12 miles is..." Liana trailed off, doing calculations. "That's 99.8% accuracy. Without sensors, without instruments, with your eyes closed." 15 years of practice," Patricia said. "Same route every day, learning to walk without seeing. Your brain gets good at it if you do it long enough." "That's not just practice," Liana insisted. "That's unconscious cognitive capability operating at levels our neurological models don't account for. Humans aren't supposed to be able to do this." Patricia laughed. "Humans do all kinds of things we're not supposed to be able to do. We just don't advertise it because it seems normal to us. Every mail carrier navigates by memory. Every cab driver knows their city without maps. Every wilderness guide reads terrain by instinct. You never studied it because you were looking for dramatic abilities. Nobody looks at the mundane ones. Kael'thas listened to this exchange while watching the storm rage overhead. A distant howl above the canyon walls, still lethal, still blinding every sensor his people possessed. Patricia Thomas had walked straight through it with casual confidence, using skills she'd developed delivering mail in desert towns, and now the galaxy's understanding of human capability needed to be completely rewritten. He activated his command channel. Fleet Command, this is Kael'thas, requesting formal assessment update for human surface operations. Go ahead, 7. Human Thomas demonstrated involuntary terrain memorization and dead reckoning navigation far exceeding predicted capabilities. She navigated 12 miles through sensor-blind conditions with near-perfect accuracy. Recommend immediate integration of humans into all surface operations involving challenging visibility or navigation. A long pause. Then, explain involuntary terrain memorization. She developed it through repetitive professional work. 15 years as a postal worker, walking the same routes daily, learning to navigate without visual confirmation. Her brain automated the process. She maps terrain unconsciously while walking. Claims all human mail carriers and delivery professionals develop this ability. Another pause, even longer. Kael'thas could imagine the command staff exchanging looks, pulling up human personnel files, starting to ask questions that should have been asked years ago. Understood, 7. We're initiating immediate review of human surface personnel capabilities. And Kael'thas? Tell Thomas she just changed fleet operational doctrine. Command out. Kael'thas looked at Patricia, who had pulled out a ration bar and was eating calmly, eyes still closed, apparently taking a nap against the buried spaceship hull. Thomas, Fleet Command says you've changed operational doctrine. Patricia swallowed her bite of ration bar. Tell Fleet Command they should talk to the Postal Workers Union. We've been trying to explain this stuff for years, but nobody ever listens to mail carriers. She took another bite. Also, tell them I'm still just a postal worker. I deliver things to places. You want me to consult on navigation? Fine. But I'm not becoming a military specialist or whatever. I like my job. Noted, Kael'thas said. He sat down beside her, finally allowing himself to acknowledge the exhaustion he'd been suppressing for 5 hours. Around them, the expedition and the rescued survey team settled into defensive positions, waiting for the storm to pass and extraction to arrive. 6 hours later, when the orbital shuttle descended through clearing skies to pick them up, Patricia Thomas opened her eyes and stretched. Nice nap, she said. Ready to head back? She walked to the shuttle with the same casual confidence she'd walked through the storm. A postal worker who'd spent 15 years learning to navigate without seeing and had just saved 17 lives by doing exactly what came naturally. As the shuttle lifted off, Kael'thas watched her looking out the viewport at the desert below, and he wondered how many other mundane human abilities were waiting to change everything, if anyone bothered to pay attention. 2 weeks later, Patricia Thomas walked another expedition through another storm. This one a methane blizzard on a frozen moon where visibility dropped to 0 and every navigation system failed within minutes. She closed her eyes, started counting steps, started humming her old postal route song. Behind her, 4 alien trainees tried desperately to learn what she did unconsciously. They failed. You couldn't teach 15 years of muscle memory in 2 weeks of classes. But they were learning to trust human navigators, and that was progress. Kael'thas watched her disappear into the blizzard without hesitation, leading the expedition toward a research station 6 miles distant. Vex Thule stood beside him, monitoring vital signs remotely. "She's doing it again," Vex Thule said. "She never stopped," Kael'thas replied. "We just finally noticed." Patricia's voice carried back through the comm system, calm and steady despite the howling wind. "Temperature drop in 10 steps. Rock formation ahead. Stay close and keep counting. We're making good time." Somewhere in fleet headquarters, xenopsychologists were frantically updating human capability assessments. Somewhere in the Postal Workers Union, mail carriers were getting recruitment offers for off-world navigation positions. Somewhere in 1,000 colony worlds, people were starting to realize that the most extraordinary abilities sometimes came wrapped in the most ordinary professions. But Patricia Thomas, walking through a methane blizzard with her eyes closed and her memory awake, just kept delivering.